Thank you so much. Good afternoon, Calicut. Very, very happy to see all of you here. I've been here for 2 days and the energy is amazing. And we'll talk more and in the book because our author Gaur Gopal ji is here. He's just come out with his new book, Energize Your Mind. He's the author of Life's Amazing bestseller, and this is his new book, which is currently #1 in the country. So let's give him a huge round of applause. I'd like to begin with the title, because we have an enthusiastic crowd, and in the book you talk about how we can energize your mind. So how can we do that to lead a happy and successful life?
Thank you very much, Milee. It's a great pleasure and privilege, first of all, to be here at the Kerala Literature Festival. This is my second time here. Eniki Malayalam ariyalla, korcha ariyam. So I will speak in English, not make any blunders by speaking in Malayalam. But my second time here, and I must say that Kerala Literature Festival is powerful, guys. Extremely powerful, because look at the energy and the number of young people here. It's just amazing. It's a different narrative. People in the country say young people don't read, they don't think. Who says? Look at this place here, it's just filled with young people. So first of all, a loud round of applause for yourselves, Calicut and Kerala. And of course, my gratitude to KLF for having me here, and gratitude to Milee for leading and moderating this session, and gratitude to everyone who is here for this afternoon. So the question she asked me is, how does one energize your mind? My question would be, how does one energize one's mind? Right? How many of you like eating? Oh, of course, who doesn't like eating? How many of you don't like eating? Meet me after the session. He's an odd man out. He doesn't like eating. There was one American man who came to Kerala, and he went to a Kerala restaurant to eat Onam Sadhya, and was served on a banana leaf. So he had the meal, and as he was walking out, American man, he doesn't know what it is. So the restaurant owner asked him, "Sir, how was the meal?" He said the meal was fantastic, the salad was really stiff. He ate the banana leaf thinking it's salad. So when it comes to energizing our body, we know the first thing we require to do is to eat well. Our diet and nutrition is extremely important if we want our bodies to be energized, if we want the right kind of immunity in our bodies. The second thing that we require when it comes to energizing our body is exercise as well. We need to exercise, whether it's jogging, whether it's yoga, whether it's gymming, whether it's Zumba, whatever it is. You cannot have an energetic body unless you have some kind of an exercise routine, an exercise regimen. How many of you boys here want a six-pack abs? Okay. They get a family pack, that's another story. So, nutrition is important to energize your body. Exercise is important to energize your body. And adequate rest is important to energize your body. If you don't sleep well, you know how cranky you can go. If you sleep too much, you're called lazy. If you sleep too less, you get crazy. That's the formula, right? You need the right kind of nutrition, the right kind of exercise, the right kind of rest. Why should we treat the mind any different? If we are looking at energizing our body through nutrition, exercise and rest, that's exactly what we need to do to energize our minds. The first thing that is really crucial and important is the right kind of nutrition. Ladies and gentlemen, we should remember that whatever we eat is who we are. Don't they say, tell me what you eat and I'll tell you who you are? And that's not true just for the body. That's exactly true for the mind. What are we listening? What are we watching? Whom are we hanging out with? What is our nutrition? The content that we consume is the nutrition that we're giving our minds. If we consume rubbish, if we watch rubbish, if we listen to rubbish, if we read rubbish, what we're going to be is rubbish. Didn't Jim Rohn say you are the average of the 5 people whom you hang out most with? So who do you hang out with? Therefore, the first thing to energizing your mind is your ahar. What goes in? Ahar is not just food. What do you watch? What do you read? What do you listen? So important. And in a world where there's so much content available, humongous amount of content available, we have to be extremely choosy, conscientious of the kind of content we choose to. That's what energizes our mind. Are we consuming something that lifts our mind and inspires it and motivates it, or are we consuming something that's pulling it down? Our choice. The second thing to do for the mind, how many grams is this phone, guys? 100, 200, 250. If I keep this phone on my palm for 2 minutes, it'll probably hurt me. If I do this phone, keep this phone on my palm for the rest of the session, as I'm talking, I hold this and talk, it'll start hurting my wrist even more. Imagine if I hold this phone like this for the rest of the day, it's going to start paralyzing my wrist. It's not how many grams, it's how long I hold it and how I hold it. You know what's happening, ladies and gentlemen, guys and girls? We are carrying this phone in our mind. Our anxiety, our guilt, our depression, our loneliness, our lack of self-worth, our failures are like this phone. And what's happening is, because we are carrying it all the time, we don't energize our mind. We are depleted of that energy. You know what I need to do when this phone is on my hand? All I need to do is just every now and then take it off. I can't take it off completely. How many of your students here? Can you take off career pressure and completely? No. But you need to take it off every now and then so your hand feels relaxed. How many of your professionals working here? How many of you been victims of workplace politics at your workplace? Some people are not raising their hand. They are saying, the guy who does politics sitting next to me, sir. So you can't take the phone off completely, can you? But isn't it important that every now and then we let go? 5 to 6 hours a day, we give rest to our bodies. Do you give rest to your minds? Do you take this phone off, things off your mind, detox your mind, take things off your mind so your mind is in restful state? And the third thing to do to energize your mind, exactly like what you do for the body, is to exercise it. If you don't exercise your mind, it's just going to become obese. It's going to get a lot of tummy fat. You know, this is North India. Upper body is North India. Lower body is South India. Middle is Madhya Pradesh and Chhattisgarh. Put together, they are the largest states. You know how hard it is to lose this tummy fat. It's like you don't need a float when you're in water. You can float automatically. There's an automatic float. You get obese if you don't exercise. There's extra fat that you need to shed off if you don't exercise. That's exactly what you need to do to energize your mind. If you don't exercise, there's going to be obesity, mental obesity. Right? Mental obesity. What is exercising? Exercising is what you're doing, hearing, using your brain muscles, using your mind to read, for creativity, for innovation, for thinking. And therefore, nutrition, rest and exercise. What is the content you consume? How often do you give rest to your mind, and how much do you take this phone off? And how you exercise your mind with innovation, creativity and thinking is the way to energize the mind. Sorry for a very short answer to that long question.
No, I think it was very useful to understand the way you explain between the body and the mind. And that brings me, to emotions and thoughts which I think most of us find very difficult to deal with. And in the book you've spoken about how to feel, deal and heal the emotions. So why don't you tell our audience a little bit about how to do it?
Yeah. I was invited to speak at an event called the Masters of the Century in Singapore. And I go to all of these events, and trust me guys, all of these watches, these phones, these fancy gadgets, I don't buy them. They're fringe benefits of being a speaker. I get all of these as gifts. What you guys have to buy, I get as gifts. Choose your career wisely, guys. Sorry about that. So I went to this event called Masters of the Century, where it was gave me gifts. It was in Singapore. It was a fantastic event, over 2,000 plus young people. I love to speak to young people. Young people are like fresh bamboos. They're willing to mold their thinking. Elderly people, I'm not saying you're old bamboos. Otherwise all the older people are saying we're going to curse this guy. But we all know that when we are younger, our thinking is very malleable. We can very malleable to think in a certain way. I love speaking to young people. And in Singapore, it was not a single Indian in the crowd. You know, when it's Indians in the crowd, it's kind of easy to speak because it's home ground. You know, we can connect. We know our culture. We know what works here. I know what joke I can tell. I know what point to make. And I know guys will crack up. But when you're there, we're not a single Indian sitting. That's where you test your waters. How it goes. So I spoke for about an hour. Man, I must tell you, it went really well. They were cheering, whistling. I thought only Indians whistle. They were whistling too. They were whistling, cheering, clapping, applauding, rooting for me. And after the talk was over, I came backstage towards the green room. And I heard the audience, everybody in the audience, loudly cheering, Sophia, 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 Sophia. Like once when I'd spoken in Bombay, the audience after my talk was cheering, Gaur Gopal, Gaur Gopal, wanting me to do an encore, a repeat of what I'd done. But this time it was Sophia. First I thought, did they get it right? Why did they think Sophia? So they should have said my name, right? Then I thought that the lineup of speakers was such a brilliant lineup of speakers. I thought maybe Sofia Vergara from Modern Family. She must have been the guest to speak. So that's when the gentleman behind said, would you like to meet Sophia? I said, why not? When would a bald monk get to meet Sofia Vergara from Modern Family? I said, let's go. So these guys took me behind to Sophia's room. And there were these guys standing there, bodyguards, like stocky. You know these bouncers? Like stocky, their biceps were like rippling out and their pecs were like standing like this, two of them right there. And I said, Sophia? They said, no, she's plugging in. I said, what's plugging in? I thought it's a new Singaporean slang. You know, nowadays language is so different. Like you say, he's zoned out. Zoned out. Language has changed so much. I was going mad, ruffling. Like if you say, I'll meet you at 9:30, that's old style English. Say, I'll meet you at 9:30. Very high class English. I'll see you at 9:30. Or they'll say lol. Then lolling, what's lolling? So we've changed, language has changed over a period of time. So I thought, what is plugging in? And being a speaker, I knew plugging in could mean, you know, being in your space. But before you speak, just yourself plugging into your thoughts or plugging in some device. So I said, okay, no problem, just plugging in, fine. So I said, if Sophia, whenever she's ready, tell me. And as I was saying this, they brought Sophia out. She was a robo, bald like me. The only common thing between us was a hairstyle. And the advantage of having this hairstyle, once I was telling one of my friends, the advantage of having this hairstyle, I said, I don't have to waste time grooming my hair. Man, how much time going grooming your hair? He said, there's a disadvantage. I said, what? He said, you don't know till where to wash your face. There's no boundary. So Sophia and me, Sophia and me, both of us had the same hairstyle. I could empathize. She was a humanoid. The first humanoid, the first human robot to be made. And when they said he was plugging in, they meant literally plugging her in. Literally plugging her in. They brought her on stage. I walked on stage. They brought her on stage. And then she was asked a question. I must tell you guys, she answered the question way better than any human being. She answered the questions way better than anybody at KLF, at JLF, at TLF, any literature festival in the world. She answered the question better than any bloody crappy guy in the world. She was so good. You know what? All of these answers were programmed into her. And she moved her eyes like this. And sometimes whenever she had to something, she did this, constantly she was doing like this. And I was like, even the emotions she's feeling are programmed into her. She doesn't know how to feel. A humanoid doesn't feel. If you guys have come here to listen to me, I feel very gratified and grateful. I feel it. A Sophia doesn't feel that gratitude. If you applaud, that energy makes me more energetic to speak. Your energy feeds into my vibe. Sophia doesn't make any difference to Sophia. And therefore, guys, you know what this phone is? It's mine, don't worry. Why are you? They're all like, it's my phone. Shall I get it for me? It's my phone. Right? Shall we drop this? No. We don't want to drop this. I'll drop it again. It doesn't feel. Shall I drop one of you into the ocean? Shall I drop one of you into the ocean? A chip, a metal, a phone, a humanoid, a robo doesn't feel. A human being feels. How many of you felt depressed ever? Thank you. How many of you felt guilty for not keeping up your New Year resolutions until now? Thank you. How many of you felt hurt because somebody said something to you? Thank you. How many of you felt lonely because you felt abandoned by someone? Thank you. How many of you feel lack of motivation one of those days? Thank you. How many of you feel like completely envious and insecure when one of your colleagues gets a promotion? You don't have to raise your hand. I know it's okay. You don't have to raise your hands. I understand, guys. I haven't asked you to raise your hands for everything, but I know you're raising your hands. Sophia doesn't feel any of these. Human beings means emotions. And you know what? When it comes to this feel, deal and heal model, how many of you ever been to a doctor? Of course, one lady went to a doctor and said, when the doctor said, how's your headache, madam? She said, well, he's out of town. Headache is her husband, he's out of town. Can you imagine that? When you go to a doctor, you can only deal with your disease and heal yourself if you can describe your symptoms properly. The doctor says, tell me what's happening. I feel a headache. Bloody every disease you get a headache. No, but what is happening? I get a headache. Sir, but anything else with the headache? No, but I get a headache. How do you define what's exactly happening? When you define what's exactly happening, the doctor knows what to give you. With your feelings, I feel angry. But how do you feel? No, but I feel angry. But how do you feel? I feel annoyed, I feel frustrated, I feel agitated, I feel upset, I feel hurt. The more you are able to define how you feel, the better you will be in dealing with it. And when we deal with it, ladies and gentlemen, it's very crucial. As you take the treatment, as you deal with your emotions, as you deal with your depression, as you deal with your guilt, very crucial also to heal. And what's healing? Healing is taking off all those things that are left over in us. How many of you have some memories that are left and they linger? How many of you had a heartbreak? Come on guys, raise your hand. How many of you had a heartbreak? No, if you speak lies in front of a monk, you will get cursed. How many of you have had a heartbreak? No, ma'am. You don't have to.
I raised earlier too.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm just intimidating everybody.
We don't want to get cursed, do we?
I'll tell you what, there's always the vestiges, the leftovers of what we go through. And that requires a lot of healing, right? So the feel, deal, heal model is about the ability to describe how we feel, not just angry, the subtle shades of anger. How do we deal with it? Because when you know the cause, can you deal with it? And can, after you deal with it, if there's any vestiges that are left over, how do you heal? So that's the model written in the book.
Absolutely, and it's a step-by-step model and very practical. So I hope you guys will read the book and try to use it yourself. You know, all these emotions that you spoke about, Prabhu, also leads to anxiousness and, you know, work pressures and various other mental health problems also these days that we've been talking about a lot. How do we deal with these in our day-to-day life?
Oh my God. Loaded questions for a Sunday afternoon, isn't it? How do we deal with anxiety and mental health issues? So many issues out there, isn't it? Today especially. Earlier, if you would talk about mental health, people would be like, it was taboo. What do you have? Mental health problem. And the first thing people would think is you're mad. Can you imagine the thing associated with mental health? It's like physical health. Just like you have a body, you have a mind. Just as your body has issues and diseases, the mind will get diseases. But when you go to treat your fever, nobody calls you names. When you go to treat your COVID, nobody calls you names. When you go to treat your fracture and put a cast on your foot, nobody calls you names. But if you say, I go to a psychiatrist or a psychologist or a therapist, people will say, "Gadbad hai. Something seriously wrong with you?" How many of you have experienced that people still think like that in this country, and this needs to change? The taboo around this whole mental, treat your mind and mental health exactly the way you treat your body and physical health. If you need to go to a physical health professional for your physical health, you'll have to go to a mental health professional for your mental health, guys. During COVID, my God, how much trouble? How many of you had like serious trouble in your mind during COVID? Anxiety, what will happen to my career? Will I get a job again? Will I get COVID? Will my father survive? So many anxieties during COVID. One psychiatrist wrote a board outside his hospital, clinic. He said, please don't come to us if you're talking to a wall. This is normal during COVID. Talking to a wall. People became so lonely. He said, come to us only if the wall starts talking back to you. You know, I mean, we go through so much, ladies and gentlemen, isn't it? And one of them, as Milee said, was anxiety. How many of you had anxiety? Anything about anything? Any of you ever had a panic attack because of anxiety? Last minute something, sweaty, hand palms are sweaty. Any of you ever had a panic attack before a presentation or a job interview? Or an exam? My God, seems to be like I'm catching the right pulse there. All hands going up there, isn't it? What do you do to deal with this anxiety? Out of the many mental health things, I'm just choosing one to discuss. You can pick up the book and read, and we've also come up with an app called Monkeyfy, which complements the book, which is affirmations, therapy, which I have personally recorded for you to deal with these issues as self-help, right? How does one deal with anxiety? Let me tell you a story. I was with my friend in San Francisco. I told you guys, choose your career wisely. I was with my friend in San Francisco, and this friend of mine said, would you like to go for skydiving? I said, well, why not? I'm a very non-orthodox monk, a very non-conventional monk. I'm not one of those who will come on stage and talk religion. No, never. I haven't spoken a word of religion. I'm not one of those who will come and sit like... No, I'm not one of those. I'm a very non-conventional, unorthodox type of monk. So skydiving? I said, let's go for it. The night before, I was laying in bed. I said yes. But once you say yes, then the mind starts playing games. I said, oh, yes. Tomorrow. What if? What if the parachute doesn't open? Imagine that, guys. I'm at 18,000 feet high and they push me down, and imagine if the parachute doesn't open. Goodness me, like finished. That's the last skydive of my life. That's the only time when you go in the plane with the doors closed and come down with the doors open. Because you die. So in my mind, I'm like, what's going on? I said, look, let's first go to Google Baba. Because Google Swamiji has answers to all questions. So I went to Google and checked how many fatalities happen in skydiving per year. Correct? So what if the parachute doesn't open? So how many fatalities actually happen per year? Guess what? There was only 13 fatalities that happened in the year 2019. All of 2019, only 13 people died in the whole of the United States of America because of a skydiving issue. This is way more than car accidents that happen on the road, right? Then my mind said, what if I am in the 13? I know it's only 13 people died last year in 2019. What if I am one of those 13 people? Bloody, I'm gone. Then I said, well, if I'm one of those 13 people, now I have to make the choice. Do I want the excitement of jumping down, or do I want to stay in the couch and remain as a couch potato? That is a choice I'm going to have to make. Everything you do, you're going to take a risk somewhere. Do you think right now these things can't collapse?
You're giving us ideas.
Oh my God! I'll tell you, everything that you do is this. How many of you know that marriage can be a big risk? Oh my God, look, all hands are up. Don't they say love is blind, marriage is the eye-opener? I'm so sorry guys, just on the lighter end. But, everything you do is going to come with something, right? So compared to so many 13, right? I said I'm going for it. Because when you have anxiety, you could either look at it as fear or as excitement. You have the choice. If you're looking at it as fear, you'll remain in the couch. If you look at it as excitement, you'll probably take that risk. The next day, I came to that skydiving place. They asked me to sign a form. If there be anything that happens to your life, you are responsible. The repeat episode of what happened in the hotel the night before happened here. Shall I do it? I'm having to sign this form. I signed it. I entered, they decked me up. I came up on the plane. The plane took off at 18,000 feet high. The guy came and he was strapped on my back. And guess what they say? They open the door and they'll say, at the count of 1, 2 and 3. At 3 you're meant to jump. They say at the count of 1 and at 2 they just push you, because at 3 you will hold the bars. They say at the count of 1, 2, 3, but they push you at 2 because at 3 you'll hold the bars. I'll tell you what guys, it was an exhilarating experience. Exhilarating experience. Liberation from everything, just floating in the first 30 seconds of the free fall. Man, you must try it. Superb. Too good. Why am I even telling this story? To say that if you have anxiety about anything, first do some rational thinking like I did. Don't just allow your anxiety to take over. There's rational thinking. What could be the worst possible outcome? What could be the best possible outcome? Do some rational thinking about it. Don't just sit there on the couch worrying, oh my, I can't, oh this is happening, that's happening, bloody nothing is going to change. Do some thinking. And if you can't think yourself, seek help of somebody who can help you think. Turn your fear into excitement, because if you're fearful, you're not doing it. If you change, just shift your mindset a little bit into excitement. I haven't prepared for the exam, but I'm excited. I'll go and I'll crack. I'll write what I know. Let's see. I'll go. Change that. And most importantly, when you have anxiety, it's good to seek help. Open up. It'll make you feel lighter, like this phone. Why are you carrying it alone, guys? If you just have one more hand to hold this up, the weight becomes less. If you're doing it alone, it's too much. But imagine two more hands join up here, the weight becomes a little less for you. Seek help, and if needed, medical and professional help as well. If it's a very serious issue all the time, seek that help too. So just one example of a mental health issues, anxiety attacks and panic attacks.
No, absolutely. One of the strongest feelings sometimes we carry is of guilt. Because that's something that we encounter at some stage of our lives. I think all of you would have felt it too. I'm a working mother. If I'm here sitting, leaving my little daughter behind, sometimes you cannot avoid but feel a tinge of guilt, which pulls you down. Your energy is down. So how can we deal with that and overcome it?
Right. Any of you ever felt guilty about anything? Any of you ever felt guilty about hurting your boyfriend? Make some noise. Nobody felt hurting about it? Okay, let me ask. Make some noise if any of you ever felt guilty about hurting your girlfriend. Okay, sorry. Make some noise if any of you ever felt guilty about hurting your spouse. My God, where have I come? You don't need me. You don't have any guilt. Madam, why did you ask that question? These guys have no guilt at all. They have no guilt about anything. How does one deal with this feeling of guilt? Right. Look, guilt can be constructive and guilt can be destructive, both. Guilt can be a constructive feeling too. Imagine a society where nobody feels any remorse for anything they do. Will be a bunch of shameless idiots. Imagine if nobody feels a remorse for anything that they do. We will be a bunch of shameless idiots. So guilt is good. Guilt is good because it keeps our moral compass in place. It keeps us aligned to our values. If you feel guilty about hurting someone, celebrate because your values are in place. You know I shouldn't hurt. If you feel guilty that I did not keep up with my workout routine, celebrate because at least you have that thing in you that I'm not doing it right. You're not shameless. That is constructive guilt, and it's very good. It's very good if it helps us improve. What is destructive guilt? I don't keep up my workout routine, I hurt somebody, and I feel guilty, but I do nothing about improving myself. So guilt can be constructive. And then there's two other kinds of guilt. One is called reasonable guilt, and the other is called unreasonable guilt. What's reasonable guilt? Feeling guilty for what I actually did. I may have hurt somebody. Like I can tell you, I have told this story many times. I put this in my book as well. There were 2 years of my life as a teenager when I didn't speak to my father a single word. I did not speak one word to my father, guys. 2 years later, my father came and he fell at my feet. This is India, you don't do that kind of stuff. My father fell at my feet, putting his head on my feet and looking at my face and saying, "Talk to me, son," and I was turning my head away. We had some ideological differences. Amazing father, wonderful dad. But we had some ideological differences. And we can't bring ideological differences in our relationships. Ideology should be kept out of relationships. Your ideology in your place, my ideology in my place. Why are we bringing it in a father-son relationship? 2 years, not a single word spoken. My dad fell at my feet. I'm turning my head away. My mom said, "Come on, son, talk to him. He's your dad after all." I started speaking just because of my mom's insistence. And in 2 weeks' time, I left home to become a monk. Every year, every single year, I came back home to meet my parents. Once a year I would see them, thinking, I'll say, I'm sorry, Dad. I shouldn't have put you through that. As a son, I shouldn't have put you through that, and now I'm a monk. Even all the more I should say I'm sorry. But there's this 3-lettered word, ego, which stops you from saying this 5-lettered word, sorry. And every single year I went there, I thought I was right. Every single year, how many of you think like that all the time? I'm right, why should I apologize? Why should I adjust? I'm right. And is life only about being right? Do you simply want to prove that you're right? When I say a sorry to someone, it doesn't mean that I'm wrong. It just means that I value that person and the relationship more than being right. That's all. That is all. Who said that saying sorry means I'm wrong? No. But I just couldn't say it. Until the year 2009, I came back from London after a lecture tour. That year before I went to London, my dad had asked me, I'd gone to see him, he was bedridden. My dad said, son, when you come back, will you bring all your lectures for me from London? I said, okay. I never got the time to visit. As soon as I came back from London, one morning my mom called and said my father passed away. I copied all of those lectures in the pen drive. All through my drive to my mom's and dad's home, I held that pen drive, looking at it non-stop for the 3 hours drive. That's what he wanted last, to listen to my lectures. And I didn't say a sorry once. As I reached my mom's home, I opened his fist and put the pen drive in his hand. Nobody saw it. Closed his fist again. Physically, it meant nothing. Those lectures were not going anywhere physically. It was an expression of a sentiment that I brought it for you. And then I put my head at my father's feet and wept a few tears and said, sorry, Dad, I shouldn't have done this to you. You know what? Life took away the opportunity to say a sorry. Life will take away that opportunity. And I just think to myself now, why couldn't I have just done it then, just keeping my ego aside? That guilt of not having said it will be with me for the rest of my life. And now this is called reasonable guilt. Why reasonable? It's my mistake. What do I need to do? I need to correct myself. From that episode, anytime anything happens, should I now allow my ego, my bloody, damned, crappy, shitty ego to still come in my way? I've had an experience, and each one of us have had an experience. Should I still allow that to come in my way after that experience and then feel guilt later? I must correct myself. I must mend my ways. Number 2, I thought, how can I correct this with my father now? He's gone. There's only 2 things. I knew I've said a genuine sorry at his feet, this dead body. But the best way to rectify it is to live by the way he would have expected me to live. To make him feel proud wherever he is. And I know that he's proud wherever my father sits today. And which is the one way I keep that guilt aside. That reasonable guilt aside. And of course then there is unreasonable guilt. I feel guilty for we've not done anything. We've not done anything wrong. Why are we feeling guilty for something? It's all imaginary. We just imagine, oh, my girlfriend, she felt hurt. She didn't talk to me today. Maybe I did this. Why maybe you did this? Why imagining? A lot of times we live in the world of imagination, and we need to come out of that imaginary world and deal with that unreasonable side of guilt, which is take that imagination aside. And sometimes one of my friends from America, he lost his father. He couldn't come. He couldn't come because there was a visa issue. Not that he didn't want to come. He's killing himself in guilt. I told him, look man, this is unreasonable guilt now. It wasn't your fault. If it was your fault, fine. It wasn't your fault. And of course I spoke to him for hours and said there are a few things that are in our control that we can do. And a few things that are not in our control, like pi 3.1418 constant, you can't change it. Keep it aside. Your visa issue was a pi 3.18, can't change it. But all the good things that you kept doing for your father was the x, the variable in the equation that you did so much. So focus on what you did. Don't focus on what you couldn't do, that too for factors which were out of your control. Just a couple of thoughts. A whole chapter is written in the book on dealing with guilt. Yeah, thank you.
I think your father would be very, very proud
I
wherever
am
he
hoping,
is.
madam, I'm hoping. Yes.
We're all sure of that. There's also a very interesting anecdote in the book about someone called Virus. And you say, let's learn from the virus. So why don't you tell us who this virus is?
Oh yeah. There's a chapter in the book called Learning from Virus. How many of you seen Tare Zameen Par? If you have Hindi movie Tare Zameen Par, some of you? Yeah. Tare Zameen Par has Professor Sahasrabuddhe, who's played by Baman Irani. Huh? Oh, sorry. Three idiots, right. I'm sorry. So, Baman Irani, who's Professor Sahasrabuddhe, who's Virus in that movie. He was with me on the plane once and we became real close friends. He was sitting right next to me. And then he asked me, do you watch movies? Like imagine, people want to catch monks on these questions. Do you watch movies? Sir, in your free time, you are spiritual, but do you also take some spirits? Spiritual spirits. So they all want to catch you on the wrong foot. Of course, Baman wasn't like that. He asked me, do you watch any movies? I said, no, I don't actually. He said, I definitely want you to watch one movie. He said, you should watch this movie called Tare Zameen Par, which is about a boy called Ishan who's dyslexic, has learning difficulties. And his father is like, disowning him, like doesn't understand him. And this Amir Khan, who plays his teacher, Nikum, is the one who empathizes with him. And then there's a scene in the movie which Baman Irani really insisted on because Baman himself used to be dyslexic as a child. So he had this close connection with this movie and this episode. And he reminded me of this one scene from that movie where Amir Khan, Nikum, talks to his Ishan's father, Mr. Sharma, and says that in the Solomon Islands, people there don't fell trees with axes. All they do is they hurl abuses and say all kinds of bad things and negative things to the tree. And just by the negative energy and the abusive words used, the tree falls down. I have no clue how true that is, but that's a part of the movie. So I put that in the chapter as a reference to say that if a tree is so susceptible to the negative energy that comes through our words, imagine how susceptible and how vulnerable human beings can be to how we speak. Every word that is spoken out of appreciation, encouragement, kindness, lifts and inspires someone to do something spectacular. And every word that's spoken to demotivate, criticize, gossip, demean, condescend, pulls somebody down. And therefore this is the whole chapter is about learning from Virus, developing sensitive communication. We have to say what we have to say. How many of you had to give feedback to somebody? Okay. How many of you had to tell your wife, your mother, your spouse that something was not right in the cooking? Okay, thank you. How many of you had to tell your colleague at office that they messed up at work? Thank you. We have to just do it sensitively. Next time you give a corrective feedback, just ask yourself these 4 questions. Number 1, are you the right person to say it? Only if you're the right person will they accept it, otherwise why? Number 2, do you know the right way to say it? And the right way to say it is, it's not about what you say, but how you say it. A lot of times that matters. Number 3, do you have the right intent in saying it? Which is to actually help the person, or are you just settling some old account and saying it? And number 4, is it the right time to say it? If your mom has cooked a fantastic avian and the salt is less in it, she's put her heart in cooking it, you don't want to tell her right away that the salt was less. You wait for a day, 2 days, and then say, I think that salt, something wrong. It's just the timing. Are you the right person? Is it the right timing? Do you know the right way? And do you have the right intent? Are the 4 questions that we must ask ourselves when we give feedback, and that's a part of sensitive communication too. Thank you.
Well, it says our time's up for the discussion now, but we will take questions from the audience, so please raise your hands and we'll pass the mic around.
Thank you, sir. You said that it's our definitions of the problem, not the problem is the problem. You said the definition is important. For example, you speak about the excitement and anxiety on the same context. So how you define things are getting important, right? So my question is, how can we change our definitions? Because our definitions are based on our perceptions, our beliefs, our convictions and all. It's something programmed, right? So how easy to change our definitions and reach the conclusions? And change our mood and change our anxiety to excitement?
Thank you for that question, sir. Have you ever looked at the spelling of the word habit? H-A-B-I-T, right? You take the H out of it, a bit still remains. You take the A out of it, bit still remains. You take the B out of it, it still remains. Which is precisely why they say old habits die hard. Right? It's not easy to take up those habits, and habits are not just physical habits. Habits are mental conditionings, prejudices, biases, worldviews, the way we look at the world, the way we look at life. They're habits, they're conditionings. And it's very important when we look at habits to uncondition ourselves. If we have conditioned ourselves to something, when we do something over and over and over again, we become masters in it. I'll ask you a simple question. If you practice cricket 12 hours a day for the next 1 year, will you become a Virat Kohli? Maybe, may not be, but will you become better at cricket? 100%. If you practice football 16 hours a day every day, will you become a Messi? Maybe, may not be. Will you get better at football? 100%. Whatever you practice, you get better at that. You practice distraction, you'll will get master at distraction. You practice focus, you'll become a master in focus. Right? The quality is agnostic. It doesn't say practice is agnostic. It doesn't say good or bad. Whatever you practice, you're going to get master at. Good, bad is not that's your choice. Whatever you practice, you're going to get master at that. So we have practiced even mentally living and looking at the world in a certain way. And the problem is our parental upbringing, our educational systems, our religious biases, our political biases make us see in a certain way. It's not your opinion. It's not the way you look at the world. It's the way they made you look at the world. It's that religious belief that's making you look like that. It's that political belief that's making you look like that. It's the way you were brought up that's making you look like that. It's not your viewpoint, and you think I choose. I'm like wondering who bloody chooses. Right? Everything is so influenced, and I think like this, but I'm so biased to see the world in a certain way. Which is why we've become conditioned and habituated to do it like that. Now we need to slowly uncondition that. And unconditioning takes time. Rome was not built in a day. Unconditioning, which means what? I also need to now look at other viewpoints. And that too from a neutral perspective. I am not involved, I am not uninvolved. I am not a supporter, I am not a non-supporter. I am not a follower, I am not a non-follower. I am just looking at a political party objectively. I am looking at a religion objectively. I am looking at a movie objectively. I am looking at a relationship objectively. The problem is we are looking at it subjectively all the time. So if I don't start taking the control of how I look at the world in my own hands, how will I be able to change those feelings from fear to excitement, right? So we need to uncondition ourselves, and it's going to take a while, but let's begin. And let's begin with small things. Let's not begin with becoming objective in every smaller things. Let's not, somebody comes and tells you, hey, he did that. Why are you allowing his bias to affect your opinion about that person? Become neutral and say, let me have more objective information about that person before I believe in X or Y person. You know? Otherwise somebody comes and says something, immediately I accept that narrative. That's how we'll slowly start unconditioning ourselves. Alright? Thank you.
So my question is a bit different from what we're discussing today. In the World Parliament of Religion in 1893 in Chicago, Swami Vivekananda gave a speech. I'm sure you're aware about that. So because since you're an authority on this, I'm asking you, wasn't he a bit naive when he was speaking? Not you, Swami Vivekananda.
I'll tell you what. Again we get into this whole objective and subjective thing that I was talking about. Today for me to sit here and judge a speech that happened more than a century back, without knowing the context, without knowing the exact situation, without knowing the man's intent, I think it would be it won't be right on my part to pass a judgment personally. Because I really wasn't there and I really do not know what the exact context was. I might know, I might have a transcript, I might have something, and that too from somebody who wrote it down. That too from somebody who might have had a biased opinion about it. Which is why to believe history is a big question mark to me. Because history is often written by the victors. And when history is written by the victors, it's very easy to see what is objective history. You know what I mean? So which is why this whole concept of right and wrong to me has melted away now. I can't call anything right, I can't call anything wrong because there's so many shades of grey. We can't go just by black and white. The problem is we all function so much in black and white, right and wrong. But there's so many shades and patterns of grey in between, which I don't have the access to. If I had the access to evaluate and study all shades of grey, probably I would have had an opinion, and I would have said, still after that also I would have said it's my opinion only. Right? So I think I would not judge anybody, not just him, anybody for that matter, without having understood the entire context and the intent of that individual in what they've done. Yeah? Thank you.
Next question, please. I think you have time for one or two more questions.
Very good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
I purchased your book and start reading. Your previous book I also read. I just want to know that you said that failure always give you lessons. I know, but sometime when you fail again and again, but still your mind is that you are gaining something, you have gained some knowledge, some courage by your failure. So you are becoming better. But sometimes society, family and people come and let down you. That time how to deal with the mind?
Yeah, I can still learn, I can still keep going, but they don't allow me to by telling me I'm a failure. When people look at us like that, right? That's your question, right? Yeah. There was a gentleman sitting in the marketplace and he was selling vegetables and he had a board behind him, like a whiteboard, and on that whiteboard he had written, "Fresh vegetables sold here." So one man came and said, "Sir, we see your vegetables are fresh. Why do you have to write fresh? Rub the word fresh." So he rubbed fresh. Now it was only vegetables sold here. Another guy came and, "Sir, you're sitting at the marketplace. I'm sure you're not giving out, we know that you're selling vegetables, not fish. Why do you have to say vegetables sold here? Rubbed out the vegetable. So first he rubbed fresh, then he rubbed out vegetables, now was written sold here. Third guy came and said, sir, if you're sitting at the marketplace, you're not getting vegetables for free, right? You're selling, no? Why you have to write sold here, rub sold? So he rubbed sold. Now it was only here. Fourth guy came and said, we know you're sitting here, not there. Why this here? Rub it. So he rubbed here. The board was empty. A fifth guy came and said, are you an idiot? You're such a nice board, why don't you write something on it? You know what I mean? People are always going to have an opinion, madam. You do it, you're successful, they will say, oh, he was a chance success. If you're a success story, they'll say he succeeded by chance because they envy you, they're jealous of you. They just can't stand that you're successful. They'll say, arey, by chance he succeeded or she succeeded. And if you fail, this guy doesn't know things. So always take what people say with only a pinch of salt. Don't bother about them. Whom should you listen to? Take the opinions of people who matter to you. Take the opinions of people who are well-wishers, guides and mentors seriously because they want your benefit and welfare, not just sitting in an armchair and criticizing what you've done.